Welcome to the third episode of the Boxing Lockdown, powered by SA Boxing Talk. Unfortunately, Devin Curry will not be joining us this show. And guys, we hope you're safe. We hope you're staying at home and obviously doing your bit to try and curb this COVID-19 catastrophe. But the topic tonight is all relevant to South African boxing. We're going to be talking about local matchups, prospects, grooming of fighters, and fights, obviously, that we would like to see in the future. So let me start with you. It's been a trying time for a lot of South Africans during this time, but obviously we've been racking our brains around boxing and how can we come back, and how are we going to come back, and how the fighters are going to come back, and is there going to be some sort of sense of normality? But having said that, there's some prospects out there that need to kind of get a move on. And I'm going to talk to you about a prospect that I believe won Prospect of the Year 3 years ago, Lunga Sitimela. Good fighter, very good fighter. I know he's been plagued by injury, but he needs to get a move on. What's your opinion on that, of me saying that he needs to get a move on, and why?
Look, there was a lot of momentum with him when he won that Prospect of the Year 3 years ago. But as you say, he's been a bit stagnant. Sure, injuries have played a role, but you want him to now move on to the next level, see how far he can get, and right now that has not happened. So yes, he definitely needs to get a move on, and let's see how far he can go.
So Hayden, let me ask you, with Pilum Pochane coming off a loss against Kanyili Bolana, was not for the South African title. Don't you think that should be the natural matchup to make? Is Lunga versus Pila now?
Well, I mean, Lunga versus Pila, Lunga versus Bolana, either one of those, right? I mean, those are both interesting fights. Bolana obviously winning the fight, so that naturally makes two undefeated fighters going up against each other. But for some reason, Pila is still considered a very big name in the Eastern Cape. For some reason, he's still a very big name in the Eastern Cape. But so is Bolana. I mean, if you're looking at matching two undefeated guys with similar records, that's an easy sell for you. Sitimela's obviously fallen down in the pecking order in terms of, even the Cape Town boxing scene. I mean, the guys I know it's one division below him. So if he's still a junior lightweight, I mean, if you look at one division below him, you've got the two featherweights from Cape Town, Abdulaziz Kunert and Baby Jake Imangata. And those two sort of have bigger names than Sitimela at the moment. They're sort of overshadowing him, and they're both also undefeated. So his name has fallen. Does he need a big fight? Maybe Impanchana is the big fight for him.
So talking about Kunert and Mbangati, don't you think they're getting a little bit more publicity because of this kind of mess with the South African title? There was a lot of, this one's going to fight for it. Oh, this is an eliminator. But don't you think, even though they were scheduled to fight, obviously because of COVID-19, the fight's not happening anymore. That was a great fight. You got two young fighters going up against each other, both prospects, but they're not at the early stages of their career. They've established themselves as good prospects. And it's a mouth-watering fight, that the fact that these two young prospects from the Western Cape are going to be eventually getting it on.
I think part of the whole matchmaking process, I'm not a matchmaker myself, but I would think part of the whole process is also timing. The fights have got to be made at the right time. You can't make a fight between two prospects too soon, and you can't make it too late either. So I think the timing was right for them to face each other. Unfortunately, this pandemic had to force things back, but hopefully they do fight soon, as soon as this lockdown is over. And it's got to be well timed.
And here's the thing, Hayden, is we were talking off camera, guys, about two young prospects at the 4-round level, unbeaten, fighting each other. It just doesn't make sense. Let them build their careers, go separate ways. Let the rivalry to a point simmer, let it build to a point where they can fight for a 10 or 12-round fight for a lot more money, a lot more exposure, as opposed to fighting in a 4-round fight where one kid's going to lose and another kid's going to go on. To me, it just doesn't make sense. Do you guys concur? Hayden, do you agree with me?
I agree with you. I think it's maybe bad promotion early on, not spotting that there are two genuine talents that can go all the way. You're sort of looking at someone as if he isn't going to make it, and you're looking at someone that he is. But then, of course, he can be upstaged. And then what? And then you're going to take the other guy on? If you don't like the other guy, what then, So 4-round level, if you can see that two people have genuine ability, don't match them against each other. It doesn't make sense. Build the two guys, as you said, between up to the 10 and 12 rounders, that's where people want to see the real fights. They don't want to get to the 10, 12 rounders and see your boxer still blowing guys away. You want to see competitive fights at that level. So don't get the guys, don't kill them early, build them.
We're going to stay with the Western Cape, and there's a young prospect that's making a lot of noise. Some think it's just a hoax. Some people think he can really fight. Emil Kalakuzi, Cyril, what is he now? He's 16-0, I believe, or 15-0, 16-0. And apparently he's just signed for some American agent or whatever it is. The kid needs to move, and I want to get your opinion on how you think he should move.
Well, look, Kalakuzi is another one who was talked about a lot a couple of years ago. And although he's still undefeated, he's gone so far, he hasn't really faced anyone that you look at and think that should have been a tough fight for him. So he needs to step up in the level of competition he's fighting against. So I'm hoping this new agent that he's signed with gets him the right fights, the fights that will help him move on and progress in his career, because right now he seems a bit stagnant.
Hayden, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, he's actually 20-0. I just checked right now. I mean, it's even further.
He's 20-0.
Yeah, but also, of course, I mean, we're stepping through the ranks. I think he's only 21 years old.
Who would you like to see him fight? I mean, there was talk about Rourke Knapp at one stage. There was even talk about LMB Colombo. Who do you think would be a good fight for him at this stage now?
Me.
Yeah, Hayden, go for it.
Yeah, I think Rourke Knapp would be a nice fight for him. Rourke Knapp, Boyd Allen, basically all the guys in the Super 4. Let him step up to those sort of guys. I think that Emmanuel Colombo might be too much for him. I know it is a DRC versus DRC battle. However, Colombo hits a little bit stronger, I believe, right now, and I don't think that that's a wise career move for not just him, but anybody right now.
Talking about Colombo, Cyril, very good prospect. 14-0, 14 knockouts. Can take you out with either hand. His test was supposed to be against Mshlongo. It was a level, very close fight up until that point. Colombo actually got knocked down. Eddie Marshall didn't rule it a knockdown, but everyone who was there could see, even on the footage I saw, was a legitimate knockdown. But it's not where you started to where you end. That kind of momentum, you would have thought it would have been going and going and going. It's kind of been a bit start, stop with him now. Where would you like to see him be moved to now?
I think they need to push him internationally now. And I'm talking about quality of opponents internationally. I don't think there's anyone locally that can give him any problems. His past fighting at this level, he now has to move on to international. And as much as you say, he's an exciting prospect at 14-0, age-wise, he's not the youngest guy, so he needs to get a move on. He needs to move on to international level and try. Talking about
another prospect. Sorry, another prospect that we need to mention, Arnold Pussy, 11-0, cruiserweight, Allentown Wheels kid. Got a lot of momentum going, but he needs to be moved now. Hayden, your opinion on that and why?
Listen, I liked his shots at the end. I did a post-fight interview with him, and his shots at the end is he wants to fight Yuri Kalenga. There was believed talks in that as well. Yuri Kalenga obviously not being the Yuri Kalenga of old, most certainly not the Yuri Kalenga that we grew up watching. I think that's not a bad shot, or maybe a fight against like a local contest against like Johnny Muller. I think that's also an exciting fight for him. If you talk about moving him internationally, I think Kalenga is probably the bigger fight for him, because then he can say, hi, I've arrived at international level. And I think that Johnny Muller is a much bigger local fight for him. So either way, whichever direction they want to get him, start getting him up and building him with a legitimate title, I think, firstly.
I just want to talk about... Sorry, go ahead, Cyril.
No, I just wanted to add on to that. I think with Puzi's case, he's an exciting prospect, but he's also under the shadow of like three world-class prospects we have here: Anilunga Makabu, Kevin Larina, and Tawiso Mkunu, who I don't believe is at their level yet. So I suppose as Hayden says, Kalenga, maybe Muller, those could be the fights for him. Yeah.
I want to talk to you guys about the art of grooming a fighter, particularly in South African boxing, where we've seen fighters fast-tracked, and case in point was Azinga Fozili fighting Makbutsi Nyabi. A lot of people thought it was very premature, and he ended up winning that fight. And then you look at Ticha fighting Bongani Salila, icing Salila, and then stepping up to fight Kosanari Joy, and that backfired. I also want to cast your mind back a long, long time ago when we had a young prospect called Takalani Glover fighting Vianney Bungu. And Bungu was supposed to be on his way down, but ended up beating Takalani Glover. That kind of backfired and stalled him just a little bit. What is your opinion on fighters being fast-tracked? Cyril, let me ask you, of being fast-tracked to a point where in the third or fourth or fifth fight, they become champions, and then, wow, they've arrived, and now there's no looking back.
As you said, there's no looking back. It's a huge risk. I mean, even if it does get past the what's supposed to be a tough fight, means you can't drop down in the level of competition, for one. Another thing is it's difficult. It's really difficult to know exactly where a fighter is. Sometimes it's a big risk, and I think you need to have, like, it needs to be like a really special fighter that you're going to push on. Like you mentioned, Azinga Fusile, who I believe is a very special fighter. And he did the job. He got the job done against Vic Butsinyavi, whereas a lot of other fighters may have failed at that level. You know, I mean, a lot of young, talented fighters would have failed.
Hayden, your opinion on that?
Yeah, obviously with stepping fast, it's sort of, it looks like an Eastern Cape thing where it's like, you know, that's where the guys really believe in their boxers. And I think, honestly, that's where it comes from. You want to push the guy as fast as you can because you believe in his ability. Seems to be the opposite in the Western Cape, where guys obviously fight and they stay undefeated for a long time. But anyway, when it comes to grooming fighters, I do believe the right way isn't to necessarily take the step up. Even if you do believe in someone, I mean, you look at how they groom the likes. I mean, these are Olympic champions like Mayweather, Floyd Mayweather, Oscar De La Hoya, Anthony Joshua. They built them through stages. They didn't take any step-ups unnecessarily, and these are Olympians.
And you also, man, we mentioned it on the first show, Ryan Garcia, they're bringing him along beautifully and perfectly right now. I mean, there might be a hiccup or two along the way, but I think they are doing such a marvelous job with this kid. I wanted to ask you, in terms of prospects being fast-tracked, we got to mention Ricardo Malajika. He's fighting Zoltan, Johannes Sultan, in a very, very hard-asked fight. Now, I'm not saying that he's going to lose because potentially he could score an upset and win, but don't you think he's being fast-tracked a little bit too soon? And the reason why I say that, Cyril, is should he win, and it's not inconceivable, this is boxing, he wins the fights, and then all of a sudden he's gay crashed the world ratings, and there's no looking back after 6 or 7 fights.
Totally agree. I think I was very surprised when they announced he'd be fighting Zoltan, because I thought, well, you know, he's still developing as a fighter. He's still getting to a point where I don't think we've seen the best of him yet. I think there's still a few things. There was a fight where he got exposed a little bit. I think I don't know if he's ready for that world level, even if he beats Zoltan. You know, I don't know.
Hayden, would you have liked to seen him been obviously matched locally a few more times in stiff opposition before fighting a guy like Sultan, who's a hardened veteran?
Yeah, look, we got so many local boxers in that weight division, and we're not even talking about, and I'm not even talking about like the best boxers. There's just a ton of boxers in that weight division, and Ricardo Malajika needs building blocks. I mean, as you said, once you get to that stage, you can't look back. Let's just say you knock out Jonas Sultan, and now you're the IBF Intercontinental Champion. Everything's great. From 6-0 to 40, 50 fights in your career, you're going to have to be fighting top opposition. That's not ideal. You want to be at the top of your career, potentially for the last 5 or 6 years of your career, so that you can maximize everything in your boxing career. You don't want to be rushed to a point where you have to look back and then you catch a loss. Let's just say it happened somewhere along in his career. People are going to say, oh, he's overrated, he's this, he's that. Never, you know, and that's not a tribute to of his choices.
While we're actually talking about the Superfly division, I want to talk about the fighters in that division, because you 2 weeks ago came out with a brilliant piece on who were your favorite fighters and pound for pound South African fighters, and you mentioned quite a few fighters in that division, but you left out Gideon Buthelezi. So let's talk about that division, because it's stacked. To me, it's probably the hottest and most competitive division in South African boxing today. I don't know if you gentlemen agree with me. You know, you got Sabelo Ngibiani, who's the SA champ. You got Gideon Buthelezi, who's the IBO champ. Atin Demozwini, who's a former WBC champ. Is he moving up in weight to bantam? I'm sure I heard that he might be moving up to bantam. Then you got Younger as well. And then you've got the ABU champion who beats Ngibiani in a very big surprise and upset. So that division stacked. And don't forget about a fighter who's lost 2 fights to Ngibiani, who I believe still has a good future, is Siko Nokotoli, who I believe still a very good fighter. So let's talk about that division. Which fights, or if you're a promoter, would you make? Forget about all the promoters and the rivalry and the politics. If you could make one fight locally out of that, who would it be and why?
Probably the best fight then to make is Sikibo and Dumazweni. I know it's also a cross promotion, but also a very, very high level fight. If you look at Gideon Buthelezi, he was getting his first opportunity at a legitimate guy in his last fight. Obviously, it didn't happen because the opponent came overweight. But all the previous opponents he had fought up until like in the last couple of years haven't been matched very well. So he's been sort of having a little bit of a free ride, which is why I didn't include him on that list when I mentioned the 2 other guys, because I didn't believe that he had got the credible wins that they did along the way. And another Ricardo Malajika against Siko Nkhatsola, I think that's a great fight.
It's a great fight. I know Alan Tawil mentioned it. I called it out on Facebook a few weeks ago. And, Alan, I love him very much, but obviously he sees something in that contest, and that's probably why I called it out. Let's talk about the strawweight division. Joy's resurrected his career winning the IBO championship against Joey Kanoi. I see he's moving nicely in the WBC ratings. What do you think's left for him to achieve, or how much do you think he's got left, Cyril? Let me ask you.
I think, Joy was a great champion, obviously, as we all know. I think right now he has to try and make a run for a world title, a legitimate world title. I think that's what's left for him to cap off a great career. I think that's what he has to go for right now. And like locally, I don't see too many local matchups for him. He's got to go.
Hayden, I mean, obviously, I try and condone some people gone because I prefer not to comment about that because I still feel that he's got something left and he's legitimately world class. Where do you see him going, and how would you see him progressing?
Well, I'd like to see some Piwa Konko against Kosinasi Joy number 2. Obviously, as a fan, I would love to see that fight because I know that it's very difficult to get fights overseas, and obviously we would like to see some Piwa fighting for the big titles, like he just fought at the WBC World Champion. But maybe a comeback would be against Kosinasi Joy for a second fight. So I think East London, the Eastern Cape rather, would be extremely grateful.
Cyril, let me ask you, Ticha, the South African champ, there was a lot of talk about him defending his title against Sive Nonchinga. Nonchinga establishing himself, knocking out Ivan Serrano, solidifying his position in the top 10 in the IBF. Do you think that fight should still happen, and do you think it's still relevant? Because I really don't think that fight's relevant anymore.
I think that fight should happen, but not now. I think they're both very talented, and they can both get far in their careers. Maybe a couple of years from now, when they both somewhere around at the top or close to the top, why not? You know what I mean? What's bigger than two South African guys fighting for a legitimate world title? I mean, that would be beautiful. I mean, I remember a few years ago we had a situation where we had Cassius Baloyi against Mzonke Mfana, against Malcolm Klassen, all fighting for the IBF title. We could have that kind of situation, with these guys. So maybe it's a fight that maybe we should let it marinate and not make it happen right now.
Hayden, Ticha needs to come back and rebound off his loss of Joy. Who would you like to see him fight against, and why?
If we're going to match him tough, right? We're going to match him tough.
What about Siabonga? That'll be a good fight, don't you think?
Him or Ayanda Indulani is also another good fight. Of course, between the two of them, I think Siabonga is still like he's got something in the tank. You know, obviously he showed that against Sive Nonchinga, and I know that they want to make the fight between him and Sive, but right now, obviously, it's not a fight that it should be made. So I think also Sio is a very big step. I don't think that fight should be made.
Guys, I'm not gonna talk too much about DJ Krill. He's in line to get his main debut for the IBF. Heck, he's BC number one. He's making his comeback, and then he'll be challenging Kinshura. So I think let's leave those two fighters out of this equation for now. I think let's move on to the flyweight division, and obviously Maruti Mthalane is South Africa's only legitimate world champion currently, and I think he's head and shoulders above everyone. But the South African champion, Jackson Chake, WBC international champion as well, very good boxer, very good fighter. Obviously, where do you see him going, and who would you like to see him fight against, Cyril?
That's a guy who's actually, I feel like he may have lost his best years. You know, he wasn't as active a couple of years ago as he is now. He's a very talented guy. I'd love to see him campaigning for trying to push for a secondary title, maybe going further to try and challenge for a world title. Look, I don't think he beats Maruti Mthalane, but then again, who does? Yeah, I'd love to see him fighting the best. You know,
Luyanda and Twanambi, excuse me, Luyanda and Twanambi, MTK Africa fighter too. I know you were very big on him, Hayden. So was I. So am I. I think he's a really young, talented kid. Obviously, a bright future ahead of him. Do you think he should go in against Jackson Chake, or do you think he should just, have a couple more fights before fighting Jackson?
Yeah, I definitely think it's too soon to fight Jackson Chake. I think that if you look at Ntwanambi, he is a little bit green. Although he's knocked out a lot of guys, he's very, very green. And I think that here comes to a stage where you need to sort of, hold back this guy because he's so talented that you don't want to sort of waste all his good years early in his career.
Yeah, exactly. Guys, we've discussed the junior bantamweight division. Let's move on to bantam. We've got Ronald Malindi as a South African champion. A good South African champion, just beating Randile Sichata on a unanimous decision in East London. Kid needs to move. It's time for him to gate crash the world ratings. Do you guys agree? He's cleaned up the division. It's now time to go international. Cyril,
definitely, yeah, definitely. I don't think there's anything left for him to prove locally. He's done it over and over again. Against all odds, people have written him off, and he keeps getting the W. So it's only fair for him to just move on internationally.
Zolani Tete needs to rebuild. How do you think he rebuilds his career, Hayden?
Zolani Tete, is he still promoted by Frank Warren? If he is, I'm sure Frank's going to get him up with another international title, or alternatively, if Zolani comes back to South Africa to set himself up one or two international fights and then back onto the world title level. I think, unfortunately, he ran into a very, very hot Casemiro that day, but does that take away from his ability? I don't think so.
South African junior featherweight division, always been talented. We had our very own Viani Bungu defending the championship many times and then going on to become world champion. Laduma Lamoti, I think I've always rated his ability, but he's another guy, Hayden, who actually needs to get a move on.
Laduma Lamoti does need to get a move on, but I think that if you look at the progression, how things have been moving with Rumble Africa and the IBF and, the natural progression towards the IBF world title, he's right up there. I think one or two more defenses and he might just see himself in an eliminator. But you're right, he's a popular guy. He can box. He's undefeated. He only has one draw on his resume. He's still managed, I believe, by Al Siesta in the UK. So
I'm not 100% sure on that. I think so, maybe.
Yeah. So he's got somewhat to look forward to, so long as Rumble Africa are promoted.
So let me ask you, JJ. I think the world of this kid. Where do you think he goes now?
I think, yes, I agree. Special talent. I would love to see him fight Laduma Lamoti. It's a fight that I'd love to see. I think he does need to push on as well, push on to world level. I'd like to see him fight against somebody in the top 20 of any of the major sanctioning bodies. And let's see how far he gets. I think he's a really big talent. He's one who can go really far.
Guys, international prospect Lerato Dlamini, I think he's head and shoulders above any local featherweight in South Africa right now. So we've already mentioned Magata and Knertz. Obviously, hopefully contesting for the South African Championship at some point. And don't forget the ABU champion, newly crowned, Asanda Gingley. He's a really good prospect as well down in East London. So the featherweight division is also pretty stacked at the moment. Hayden.
Yeah, stacked in terms of the SA title and so forth. I think that's going to be very competitive and very interesting to see who comes out as the sort of local featherweight king within the next year. I mean, that's, as you mentioned, 3 names there, and I think that the fans want to see who the best between those 3 names are, but they can't be categorized in the same sentence as Lerato Glamini currently. I think Glamini, he's just far beyond any other featherweight in the country, and I think that he's got the potential to go on and become a world champion. In fact, I know he's got the potential, but it's about getting there now, and hopefully it's around the corner.
Let's move on to the junior lightweight division. Azinga Fozili, I think, head and shoulders above all the others as well. Pilam Ponchani, Kanyili Bolana, Lunga Sitimela when he gets a move on. I'm also a pretty stacked division, also very hot at the moment, Cyril.
Yes, I'd love, as we mentioned earlier, Stimela against Pilam Ponchani. I think that's a good fight. I'd love to see Stimela basically just step up against anybody credible. So but as you say, it's a nice stacked division. Those smaller weight divisions, I suppose we've always had lots of talent in those smaller weight divisions, and we keep maintaining that tradition. So yeah, it's a good thing.
And besides us going through all the divisions, I mean, it might be a little tedious and boring for the viewers and the listeners. One local fight that you really want to have.
Okay, I'll mention. May not be quite South African, but it's based in South Africa. Thabiso Mchunu against Lunga Makabu, the second fight is rematch. I'd love to see that. I know Makabu is not South African, but he's based in South Africa, so that's one. And Luduma Lamati against JJ Sonjika, why not? Those are 3 I'd love to see.
Yeah, really are prospects, but at the stage where they can create a lot of buzz and hype, particularly at the Orient. Hayden, let me ask you, you've had time to think now, your one local fight or 2 local fights that you would love to make and why?
Yeah, my 2 local fights will come up in the heavier divisions. Firstly, the fight that I definitely want to see towards this year, or has to happen this year, is Reino Liebenberg against Rowan Campbell. It's an absolute must-have for the fans. I know there's been a lot of talk and a lot of speculation, and yourself being involved. But from a fan's point of view, with all the hype that's been built up, it'll be a waste if it never happens. And there's money to be made on that fight, isn't there?
And I think it's a great fight. I think it's a great local fight,
And what about Akani against Johnny? I think that's also a good fight.
Yeah, it's a good fight too. I'm going to throw you guys a curveball, and we didn't discuss this particular question. If there was one thing you could change in South African boxing, Cyril, what would it be and why?
I think it would be. I think I've said this before. The marketing of the sport. I think the sport needs more publicity than it's been getting. That's the one thing that's more than anything else I'd love to see, because more publicity means more money translates to more money for the fighters, and more money for the fighters makes the sport better. You know what I mean? So I'd love to see that, more publicity.
Hayden, before I ask you yours, my wish would be to cut out all the bullshit, cut out all the politics, let everyone work together, forget about the egos, leave the egos at the door, and put on the best fights, co-promote, share television dates, whatever it is, make the best fights happen. And we're seeing that trend happen more and more in America, where rival promoters can actually sit around a table disliking one another and still doing business. Your one wish for South African boxing, what could you change? What would you change and why? And you can't use mine.
I won't. It's sort of taking off where Cyril started. It's having more of us involved, having more people, more journalists involved in the sport to promote. It's not just obviously the promoters need to start marketing a little bit more and sort of diversify. And it's not it's 2020. It needs to start happening, but it's also a responsibility for more journalists to come on board, more people to actually start pursuing our sports.
So with that in mind, I'm going to ask you, Cyril, are promoters doing enough to promote the sport to the boxing fans, not the fighters, to the boxing fans, to the boxing public? And why?
I don't think why. Not even close. I think you look at it. There are promoters who don't even have a Facebook page. I've seen some who don't even do anything. I mean, that's free. That's free. That should be a given. You should be doing that. And it shouldn't just be social media. It should be a lot of other things, you know. In terms of, I mean, people used to, back in the days, people, there were flyers that used to be sent out. Those don't happen anymore. They should find ways. There should be ways. So I remember a few years ago, I think it was Golden Gloves. They had boxes putting on public displays at malls, at shopping malls. That might be something to look at. You know, just anything to get fighters' names out there. Remember, we need to get your casual fans interested in the sport. You need to get more casual fans watching the sport, trying to find out what's happening in the sport, and that it's going to take.
So basically, what you're trying to say is what we kind of discussed in the first episode, where I discussed with Hayden, where that fan has to have some sort of attachment or some connection to that fighter that he or she's spending money to go and watch fights. Correct, Hayden?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why it's so good to get the emotion of the fighter before the fight, behind the scenes, the training camps, everything like that. And obviously, I have SA Boxing Talk, in which I can use that platform to promote a boxer. But we need more than just SA Boxing Talk. We need a few other whatever other channels there are. We need all the channels to come on board. I mean, look at England. They got IFL, Boxing Social. I mean, America's got ES News. They got Fight Hub. I mean, there's so many of the guys. And I mean, each in hand help the promoter, help each other, help everyone, help the sport.
Gentlemen, I think I'm going to leave it there. I think it's been a great show. Cyril, your last parting shot before we say goodbye.
As always, everybody just stay safe out there and look after yourselves. Let's stay indoors and beat this pandemic. And yeah.
Hayden, your last parting shots.
Listen, guys, I'm going crazy sitting at home all the time. I really miss going out and doing interviews and stuff. And obviously, people learning more about sort of the man behind the camera. How do I say it like that? Obviously with these podcasts, and obviously thank you guys for always coming on and doing your job so well.
Yeah, and just a big shout out. We missed Evan this episode, and to the fans and the viewers, we really appreciate your support. Please stay safe, stay indoors. Let's beat this virus together, and we'll see you soon. This has been the third episode of the Boxing Lockdown, powered by Hayden Jones of SA Boxing Talk.